Hi guys, welcome back to Two Worlds Collide podcast. On today's episode, I'm joined by absolute legend in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, Adele Fornarino. Adele made history in 2024 by becoming the first Australian to win an ADCC World Championship, taking gold in the under 55 kilo division. But she didn't stop there. She went on to win the absolute division, a no weight class competition, becoming the first ever competitor from the lowest weight division to claim that title. It's truly an incredible feat and a testament to her skill, determination and grit. In this episode, we'll explore Adele's remarkable journey, the challenges she's overcome, and what it takes to dominate on the world stage. I hope you guys enjoy. All right, you ready to go?
Yep.
Adele, welcome to Two Worlds Collide podcast. How you going?
I'm good, man. I'm good. Thanks so much for having me.
You're welcome. Back here, back visiting some family in Adelaide?
Yeah, so my parents kind of grew up in Adelaide. They were born and bred in Adelaide, moved to Melbourne, but we always come back for like Christmas and Easter and all the important family stuff.
Yep. Yeah, nice. Now, we were just talking before, you actually wanted to get into law enforcement when you were younger.
Yeah, I did.
Tell me about that.
I think just the idea of having an interesting career path, something that like keeps me outside, keeps me active, all that kind of stuff. Because I grew up watching my parents go to corporate jobs and, you know, they enjoyed some parts of it and didn't enjoy every part of it. And the idea of kind of going in and sitting in a desk and staring at a computer wasn't really something that I wanted to do in my life. I didn't want to spend time not enjoying what I did, you know, for 9 hours of a day. And the idea of being outside and every day being different and interacting with people was something that really interests me. You know, obviously all the action of it, like driving cars really fast and beating up bad guys was pretty cool as well. I didn't even just want to be like a cop. I wanted to be like a SWAT.
Yeah,
like tactical response kind of thing.
Yep. Yeah, I've got a few friends in that world at the moment, and they love it. They love it. And to be honest, when I was in that world, I loved it. It's. I always tell people I would have done it for free, even back then.
Yeah.
You know, especially like going overseas to Afghan as well. Man, I would go back in a heartbeat, and I would do it for free again. It's just so much fun.
Yeah.
Obviously, you get the real bad side with it, with, you know, losing guys and stuff like that. But like the general crux of it, and you know, like the fear, but then all the emotions that come with it, the adrenaline. It's really hard to explain, but it's quite addictive.
It's one of those things of like living life to the fullest.
Yeah,
and
big
like,
time. Yeah,
you experience something that people don't understand, don't know about, have no perspective on. You're like right in front of it. You're like doing it to the most of its.
Yeah. I like, and you know, there's not too many people that, you know, can say they've went over and done that. It's like almost representing Australia on a elite level, because not many 2 people, you know, they can't really go over to, you know, Afghanistan, or like what's the other equivalent to it? I was trying to think before. It might be, you know, playing for your country or playing for your state or something like that.
Yeah.
But like I was saying on a few previous episodes, there's just something about going overseas in an active war zone that really excited me when I was younger. You know what I mean? And I had that real young adrenaline about me, but I loved it, and it was so much fun.
It's definitely chasing that adrenaline dump, because not a lot of people would be, you know, comfortable enough to actually pull the trigger on going over there. You know, some people will think about it and talk about it, but then there's another thing actually signing up and going through the process and doing the training and all that kind of stuff.
So what stops you from getting into law enforcement? Was it because you were excelling so much in your field?
There was a little bit of that going on. Like I kind of picked up martial arts and jiu-jitsu quite well. I was always decently coordinated and athletic. I had done a lot of sports growing up, so tennis, AFL, like footy, soccer, all that kind of stuff. So I really enjoyed being active. Yeah. So when I jumped into jiu-jitsu, did quite well quite early on, but more so I just had a really like passionate love of it. I really enjoyed training. I really enjoyed like martial art is one of those like really cognitive jiu-jitsu is one of those really cognitive martial arts where you have to think a lot. You have to like problem solve constantly.
Yeah, I was watching before. It's like a cat and mouse game.
It is a little bit, yeah. It's
you know, like you both sit down at the start and it's like who makes the first move.
Yeah.
I was really intrigued with it watching it, and I'm like, this is awesome, because there's just so much more to it than you know, going in there and kicking someone's head in. Like you really have to think about what you're doing. It's cat and mouse, and it's just really strategic as well.
100%. It's like let's put it like chess. You know, you can play an aggressive style of chess, you can play a defensive style of chess.
Yeah.
But everything is, you have to understand what your partner's trying to do. You have to understand, you know, 3 moves in the future. You have to plan all that kind of stuff. It's like that with martial arts.
Yeah.
with most martial arts. You look at quite famous boxers, people like Floyd Mayweather is a very defensive boxer. He's very much a counter boxer. But then you look at Tyson, and he's just like throwing haymakers, quite aggressive, moving towards center of the ring, all that kind of stuff.
Generally knocks people out in the first few rounds.
He's pretty good at that until he's 55, 56 years old, and then he gets a bit tired.
Yeah, fighting YouTubers.
Yeah. He'd be making so much money on that, though.
Yeah, I reckon Jake Paul made 20 and Mike Tyson's purse was 10 or something.
That's insane. But that's even just what's actually advertised to people. They'd be making so much on just sponsorship opportunities off the back end of that.
Big time.
Insane.
Yeah, I think that was only the pay-per-view.
Yeah.
And then you think about the sponsorships, and then you think about like Jake Paul's YouTube channel, and then his Instagram following would have grown from all the stuff he sells.
Yeah, well, both of them have brands, and both of them have things that they sell. They have their own, other avenues of revenue.
Yeah, big time. Yeah,
it'd be an insane amount of money to even think about.
Yeah. So you were saying before, it's bit of a game of chess. You can be aggressive or defensive. What's your style?
A bit of both, to be honest. I'm a submission hunter, so like my style is definitely like as soon as they come in, as soon as they can make a connection with somebody, it's like try and funnel it to a submission. I have one of the highest submission rates. I think I have the highest submission rate this year, at least, in the female category. But for me, it's just like put people away.
Yep.
Whereas like some athletes will play towards different rule sets. So if there's like a points-based rule set where different positions will give you different points, different exchanges will give you different points. Some people will just try and get a few points and kind of ride out the rest of the timer. So if it's a 10-minute match and they get 2 points at the start, they're just going to try and like coast the rest of that match.
Yeah.
But for a spectator, that's boring to watch.
Yeah, big time.
They're just stalling the rest of the match. Whereas for me, it's like if I make an attachment, I'm going to try and find something to break or manipulate or something to choke, that kind of thing.
Have you ever broken someone's limbs?
Yeah, a few times.
Yeah. In competition?
Yeah, a few times. It's one of those things that like you both sign a waiver to get out there. And when it's like black belt level, if I don't break it, they're going to break something on me. It's kind of like if it's the first to pull the trigger in some of those exchanges. And and they're in a situation where they have the ability to tap. They have the ability to just, give up. Not in a bad way, but they have the ability to prevent their body from actually taking physical damage. But if they're either like trying to be resilient in the position or they're just being a bit stubborn, then sometimes things will snap.
Yeah, and that's a part of the game, right?
Yeah, 100%.
And sometimes their ego might get in the way of tapping as well.
Yeah, well, you get to the top end of things, and especially when there's prize money on the line or, a massive title on the line. I thought about this through some of my like bigger competitions, where it's kind of like the day before I was getting out there and I was in bed just thinking about the matches. And I kind of have this moment of like, if somebody gets me in a submission, would I, like for this competition, would I be willing to let it break? And there's some of those competitions where I'm like, yeah, I'd let my body take the physical damage to take the title. And I'm like, I'll deal with the physical damage after. Like if I tear an ACL, I'll deal with the physical damage after. But
that's awesome.
I'll let it snap in that moment and I'll just kind of keep pushing forward. And you see it in some matches. There's some matches where some athletes take horrific injuries, like dislocating elbows, and they're still going and they just kind of tuck their arm into their gi jacket, or they tuck their arm into their body and they just keep grappling. Or you see like, feet getting distorted in all kind of different directions, and they keep going because like adrenaline is going to take away some of that pain.
Yeah, big time.
But just like the amount of time and energy that goes into these camps, and people just aren't willing to give up.
Yeah. That's the stuff I absolutely love hearing is like, because you're just so dedicated to your craft, right? That, like you put so much into it. You're not willing, or you're not going to let one little mistake fuck it all up for you. Yeah,
100%. It's definitely a mind game at that point.
Yeah.
It's like, can you kind of shove down the feeling of pain and actually just keep going through?
Yeah. How much do you get caught in that position?
Like with pain?
Yeah. Of like potentially breaking something or something snapping?
Like my style is very much like I keep myself out of danger because I'm attacking. There's been some situations where like people have tried to like wrench something on really fast. They've gotten like a little bit of a grip on my ankle and just tried to like at 1,000,000 miles an hour take my foot off.
Yeah.
And sometimes like I'll get off the mat and my foot will be purple. But to be honest, I'm lucky. It doesn't happen too often to me. But I am surrounded by a lot of other athletes and athletes that I will either like coach or I'll watch their matches, and like I see them sitting in submission positions and just kind of wincing because I know it hurts. Like I know they're in pain, and I know that they want to tap, but they're not going to tap. Like it's that kind of situation.
Yeah, it takes a different mindset. And I've spoken about this a lot on my podcast as well, because the job I was in the military, it really attracted MMA fighters, boxers, kids with really rough upbringings, right? Like I've had numerous mates on here that have been brought up in, drug abusive homes and all that type of stuff. So their outlet was boxing, or their outlet was MMA, or getting in trouble as a kid.
Yeah.
So it really attracted that job in the military when I was there. So I sort of understand that world of someone dedicating themselves to that craft so hard, because I've been around those people, I've lived around those people, I understand who they are.
Yeah, 100%.
And it takes a different mindset to, like, you can't just roll off the street, I don't think, and be in that. I think there has to be a bit of struggle in your life to be able to be, or to be able to excel at these things. Like, you have to have a different attitude, and like mindset. I haven't really put my finger on it to what it is yet, because there's some people that have it, and then there's some people that just don't. Like, some people will just tap straight away. Right?
Yeah, absolutely. Like I teach, and I've taught for years and years, for about like 8 or 9 years. And part of that was I would teach kids. Yeah. And you could tell straight away the difference between teaching kids in a good socioeconomic neighborhood. Yeah. And they would come in and they'd do jiu-jitsu one day and rowing the next day and soccer the next day. And these were kids that would like stub their toe and cry, and their parents would run in and, oh my God, are you okay? Like that kind of mentality. And then you go to some of the outer suburbs and train and teach those kids, and they could get thrown up against the wall, slammed on their backs, and they'd get up and they'd just keep going. Yeah. It was just like a very different mindset from these kids in the lower socioeconomic status areas.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Versus the kids in the higher SES areas, which is funny because like I grew up in a higher SES area.
Yeah, I was just about to ask about you.
Yeah, I grew up in a good neighborhood. I grew up in a nice family, didn't really go through struggles in that way. Yeah. My parents didn't necessarily coddle me, so they weren't like, if I tripped over, they'd be like, get up. I had Italian parents. Yeah, yeah. If I did something wrong, they'd be going to the second drawer and pulling out wooden spoons and just scaring me and my brother. Yeah. Like nothing, anything, but like just giving us a bit of a fright so we'd toughen up. Yeah. But I didn't mind getting thrown around. I wasn't like sensitive in that way. I wasn't like, for lack of a better phrase, I wasn't soft in that way. Yeah. I was talking to my friend about this the other day, and like your core values and your core beliefs and some of what you're made up of is defined in the first like 1 to 7 years of your life. So for example, right, if there's a kid and he falls over and he starts to cry and the parents rush over to get him up, then years and years later affecting that life, then like they'll be crying out for help. But the parent that walks over and kneels down next to him, grabs their hand and helps him up, right, and then that sort of like instinctively puts into them the thought of, I can get up by myself, but if my parents are there, then I can always lean on them. Yeah. But my first reaction has to be, I need to get up by myself. Yeah. Now, in that first 1 to 7 years, me and my friend were talking about it. Like, if you do that as a parent, go over and help them up rather than pick them up and baby them, you can be defined as a person later on in life, right? And like, I think that happened with me. That probably happened with you, and that happened with a lot of my military friends as well. Yeah. They just grew up in this environment where they weren't picked up at the first sign of, having a cry as a kid or something. They were helped up, and they were told they can get up themselves. Yeah, I think there's a balance between like you want to be able to have reliance on your parents, but you don't want to be babied. Like you don't want to be that 30-year-old that can't pay their bills or do their taxes. Still living at home. 100%. Yeah. Like, living at home is a different story because the housing market right now is insane. Yeah, it's pretty wild, isn't it? But I get what you mean. Like the idea of like being completely babied and unable to function as an adult, I think. And that's why I'm to take a turn with this whole conversation, I'm concerned about some of the next generation, about how babied, like soft parenting, I think it's called. Oh, yeah. Something like that. Like that concerns me a little bit. I've got a friend that runs a veteran mentor. It's called Veteran Mentors, but it's a youth program where they get kids that are socially addicted to social media and tech addicted kids, right? And they've been sort of babied their whole life, and they just run rings around their parents. Yep. And my mate gets them in, and they're separated from their parents for 9 days. And the first 3 days, they're just put through like a mini military training camp where it's like 6 hours of sleep,
They're up at 6 a.m., they're abed at 12 a.m., and they're just like do physical training with them all day.
Yeah.
They'll get in their face, they'll challenge them, they'll have like water protocols, so it'll be like in and out of water when it's cold temperatures during the day. So they literally just put him in pretty harsh environment for 3 days straight.
Yeah.
They break them down. Then over the next 6 days, they build them back up. But they're not allowed their phones over this period of time or anything like that. But my mate was saying it's since they started in 2014 to what they've got now, the kids are just getting, and this is going to sound harsh, but weaker and weaker and weaker. And it's what he thinks it is. It's the introduction of more technology as they're coming through. And kids are on social media earlier now as well.
Yeah.
So they're seeing all these things on social media platforms. They're gamers. They're growing up on these platforms where they're playing games 24/7. And the generations are actually becoming weaker as they come through.
Doesn't surprise me, to be honest, because you see like iPad kids sitting and just having absolute tantrums if they're not getting what they want, and then their parents are kind of bending to their will, and all that kind of stuff of just like they're so just taken by what's in front of them, and they need constant stimulus.
Yeah.
If they're not getting it, then they start freaking out. And they just don't know how to deal with that feeling of wanting something, not getting it. It doesn't surprise me that the kids are getting weaker and weaker. Like, it sounds terrible, but I think it's an actual genuine concern. And then obviously COVID didn't help because, there's parents getting stuck in the house with their kids and they have to work at home. So what do? They give them an iPad.
Yeah.
Because they have no other option. They can't keep their kids entertained. They can only keep them entertained with drawing books for so long until they're like, here, just go on YouTube and watch some videos because I got to do 5 hours of work to actually pay the bills. Yeah,
and it's these dopamine hits as well that are getting stronger and stronger through technology.
Absolutely.
And I also think I read a wild stat the other day that the average 8-year-old now has had more sugar intake before they're the age of 8 from someone that was in the 1930s, like an adult their whole life.
That's insane.
So these like cereals and stuff that are feeding kids, if you look at the sugar rating on them, they're just through the roof. And what's happening is these kids are going out full of sugar in the morning to school and they're just having these wild swings and crashes of dopamine because of these sugar hits they're getting from such an early stage in the morning. And it's just like the cereal industry and the sugar industry, they need to be pulled in line more than anyone else.
Well, it's crazy because we're at the point in time where we have the most information. Where we understand that sugar is bad for kids. We have a full understanding of that.
Yeah.
So we're at the point in time in history where we have the best understanding of nutrition. We have the best understanding of what kids need, and we're still learning, obviously, but we're still letting these things happen, and we're pumping them full of sugar and letting them loose into the world. Yeah.
It's pretty wild. It's something. When I have kids, I'm definitely going to keep an eye on it. Is obviously their sugar intake, but getting back to the basics of feeding them eggs in the morning and getting like plenty of meat in them and minimizing their time on social media and family time. Again, like I'm a real stat guy. I just love sitting there and reading stats.
Yeah.
But it was this graph, and you know how the graphs work, and it's like a timeline of events and stuff will go up and down in between it. So back in the 1970s, like the number one percentage was like family time.
Yeah.
And it might have been from there watching sports or time at work. And then all of a sudden the 70s and 80s and 90s went across, and you can see technology creep in and social media. And now it's like technology and social media are like 30 and 35% and family time's at like 10%.
Yeah, it's crazy. Like if you put that into how many hours in a day, like that's an insane amount of time. Like nowadays you can look at your phone and see how much time you've actually spent on each app in a day, in a week, in a month, in a year. And we end up spending days on social media, actually like hours and hours and hours, and we don't even realize because it's just mindless scrolling. Yeah. But I do say that like it is cool that Australia, the government has stepped in and actually put a ban on, I think 16.
Yeah, I don't mind that.
Yeah, I'm happy with that. Like, I don't mind it. As much as I'm kind of like, I don't want to be controlled by everything that the government, but like, I think it's cool that they're stepping in and being like, nah, this is a massive issue. It's going to cause some serious mental health concerns in the future if these kids are getting on social media at 13 years old. It's going to really like shape the way that they actually experience the world. Yeah, let's actually put a stop to it, which is cool.
Yeah, and I don't mind taking away freedoms of people that are under the age of 18. Like you can't vote, you can't drink, you can't smoke.
I was an idiot when I was 18.
Yeah.
I was an idiot all the way until I was like 21 at least.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
I don't know if I was making good decisions at 21 as well.
Yeah, I would say mine was 30. 30, I reckon. And now I'm 34. I've started to make some good decisions.
So what you're saying is they need to take our rights away until we're like 30.
Yeah, maybe.
And then we can make responsible decisions.
Nah, maybe just people like me, and then everyone else would be fine.
Yeah.
But hey, a little bit off topic, but that was still all good discussion. Let's jump onto your previous trip to the US. Tell me about that and the title you came home with.
Yeah, so I was doing a massive camp. So I've been training all year. I've been having a lot of competitions scattered throughout the year, but the most recent one was a title under a fight promotion called Who's Number One. That's kind of Who's Number One. The history of that is it was one of the first to really stamp its name on a jiu-jitsu fight promotion that had regular matches and titles. So I remember growing up watching these matches. I remember growing up like streaming them from Australia.
It's like Gordon Ryan and stuff like that.
Exactly.
Yep.
So that's kind of where Gordon Ryan
Made his name.
grew his name.
Yeah.
Exactly. He was one of the most prolific fighters under Who's Number One.
Yeah, I watched a documentary on him.
Yeah.
He's just a savage.
He's a savage. Yeah. Really, really interesting competition experience. Like really interesting how his perspective on the sport and what he's done for the sport. Let's say he's like a Conor McGregor of jiu-jitsu, where he's just definitely grown his brand. He's increased the viewership in general. Like love him, hate him. He's done well for the sport. Like you don't need to agree with everything that he says or does to understand that if he has 1 million followers on Instagram, that's 1 million people that are actually
100%.
tuning into to jiu-jitsu. So that's fantastic for us because as an athlete, the more people, the more money, the more opportunity. Like it just keeps growing like that.
Yeah, because he's not really liked by the Gracies or anything like that, is he?
He's not liked by
anyone.
A lot of people.
Yeah.
Yeah, he doesn't bite his tongue. He says what he thinks.
Yeah.
He is very opinionated on a lot of things. He's like, for lack of a better phrase, arrogant about his jiu-jitsu ability, but he also backs it up.
Yeah, so he's also one of the greatest of all time
100%.
in that field. He's pretty much...
He's arrogant for a good reason.
Yeah, so pretty much like when I watched his documentary on YouTube, that's when I started paying attention to it. I was like, this is cool. This guy's cool. He's, like you said, he's outspoken, speaks his mind. And he's just got that like sense of aura about him as well, that he can like really, like he can beat anyone.
Yeah. Yeah, I think he was one of the guys that came into the sport and just gave it a different perspective. He understood the importance of being a really good athlete and training and winning all these titles and all that kind of stuff. He also took quite a professional approach to his training under John Danaher. So John Danaher is arguably one of the best coaches. And again, he's one of those guys who love him, hate him. He gets results out of his athletes. And a lot of that is due to like the group, like their team's professionalism and how they approach their training.
Yeah.
But they just came at the sport with a complete different perspective, and now people are trying to catch up to them. But it's one of those things of they're growing the exposure of the sport, like Gordon is growing the exposure. You have the complete flip side of that. We introduce people like Craig Jones. I don't know if you know a lot about Craig Jones.
No.
He's actually an Adelaide boy.
Yeah.
He is very famous in the jiu-jitsu scene, like to the point where he recently, let's say, organized a multi-million-dollar jiu-jitsu event where the winner of the male divisions would win $1 million USD.
Yeah, nice.
So he's stepped in, but he's a jokester. He's very, very good at jiu-jitsu. Like one of those people that just naturally, or probably from training as well, just have a different perspective on how the body moves and the mechanics. So his jiu-jitsu is like out of this world good. But he's also going off partying, having fun, flying around the world, all that kind. He's the complete, like, let's say the opposite of Gordon Ryan, but they're both fantastic competitors. So it's really interesting to see the flip side of things. But he's another guy that understands the value of getting people's attention and growing the sport in that way and getting viewership and sponsorship and money towards the sport. So they both have benefited the sport just in different ways.
Yeah. And like, you know, you look at the UFC version of that was Conor McGregor.
Yeah.
You know, I was into the UFC younger, but I really got into the UFC when Conor McGregor started popping up. And he had this like cheeky grin, this cool accent, and he could trash talk like no one. Well, maybe like some of them was really good at it, but he was like the trash talker that everyone really loved.
Yeah.
And that's what brought millions of people to the UFC.
Yep. Yeah, love him, hate him. He brought numbers.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's get back to that US trip and
Yeah, so I went to the US, did a good training camp out of a gym in San Diego called Atos, was getting ready for it, cutting a bit of weight, and then had the opportunity to fight for the strawweight title. So I've had a few fights under the WNO promotion, both of which I won. So this was my third fight. Strawweight was at 115, so that's like 52.1 kilos to be precise.
Yeah,
I didn't want them cutting me any little bits of weight. I wanted my 0.1.
Yeah.
So I fought for that. It was a fantastic event. Really good training camp leading up to it, but managed to come away with the win through submission within the first. I think it was like under 4 minutes or so.
Yeah,
like
nice.
That. I think the timer ended. So it was a 15-minute match, and the timer finished on 11:11.
Yeah, so
which was pretty
no
tricky.
rounds, just 15 straight.
15 straight.
Yeah.
So for title matches under WNO, it's 15 straight, and the rule set of it is it's submission only, so there's no points for different exchanges or different positions. Both competitors are hunting for submissions. If there's no submission, it kind of goes to it goes to who's the most aggressive, who's hunting the most submissions, who has the most control of the match.
Yep.
But what they do through the match of the 15 minutes, every 5 minutes, is they'll call out whether blue corner is winning or whether red corner is winning, more so that the audience can keep track of who's doing a better job. Not that it actually impacts the results. Like if you're winning two rounds, like if you're winning the first 10 minutes, but then in the last 5 minutes, the other person has a really good exchange, like gets to the back, almost gets a submission, then they'll win the whole thing. It's not like a best of 3 kind of situation. It's just overall who does the best and who has the most significant submission attempts, significant positional control, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, nice. And so you won that, and then also I'm reading here the absolute division.
So that's in a different.
What's that?
So that's a different fight promotion. So the biggest, let's say the biggest title that I won this year was under a fight promotion called ADCC.
Yep.
And for lack of a better way of explaining it, it's kind of the Olympics of jiu-jitsu.
Yeah, nice.
It swings around every 2 years. You have to win your trials in each district. So Australia and Oceania have their trials. North America have trials. South America have their trials. And I think it's Europe and Africa have their trials. So there's like 4 trials areas. So there's like 3 ways you can get into ADCC. You can win your trials. You can, if you place first, second, third of the previous ADCC, you automatically get an invite. And then they also throw wild cards in there where they can just, based on results in the kind of 2 years lead up to ADCC, they can pick athletes and just invite them into the competition.
Yeah.
So I won my trials. So that got me into ADCC. And then in ADCC, I won my division and the absolute. So the absolute division just means it's an open weight category. So in my division, it was a 55 kilo weight category. So all the competitors had to weigh in the day before under 55 kilos. Yeah. And then the absolute weight category is there's no limit to what weight it is. It's just kind of like they can be as heavy as they want.
Yeah. That's like the ultimate test.
Yeah.
Right. So you could be fighting someone, let's say 65, 70 kilos.
Oh, at least.
Yeah.
At least, yeah.
Wow. It's like the old UFC days.
Exactly.
That's so cool. I know like they can't really do that in UFC because it's dangerous.
Yeah, it's the head trauma that you can take from a ultra heavy person hitting a straw weight and atom weight. Yeah,
but grappling, I mean, man, like if you want to be known as the best, you win the absolute division, right?
Yeah, 100%, especially being a small grappler. So in the absolute division, I think I was the lightest grappler. I was the smallest person in that division.
Wow.
Yeah, and I think that's the first time that the smallest weight category has won the absolute division in the males or the females.
History made.
That was cool. Yeah, we made a few bits of history. So there was the first I'm the first Australian to win that title, to win to get a gold at ADCC at all. So my division and the absolute. So I was the first to win a division, but I also won 2 divisions. I was the first lightest person to win the absolute, and then I can't remember something else. It was it's one of the first times that they've done the absolute division at all because they haven't done it since 2007. I think the last time that they actually did a female absolute division, but they've reintroduced it. They reintroduced it this year, which was cool.
Yeah, that's cool. Well, being the first to do something is really cool, but in Australia, but then the absolute division as well to win it. How many years ago? 20 something years ago, not 20, maybe 17 years ago. That's cool.
Yeah.
Do you ever sit back and just like pinch yourself and like, do you think that you're sort of, I don't know, has it sunk in?
I don't know. That's a tough one because it took a lot of time to actually realize what had happened.
Yeah.
Because there was a massive build up for it. So I did ADCC in 2022. My first ADCC run was in 2022. Lost in the first round to the person that won the whole competition. Mm-hmm. So I had like 2 years to kind of reset myself, go again, build up, train, all that kind of stuff. So there was a lot of build up to it. And then it was obviously the day happened, the day went well, the 2 days happened, it went well. And then kind of afterwards I was like, it was a bit of a whirlwind.
Yeah.
And then I got home and had the medals and the belt and they were kind of just sitting on the coffee table at home. And every morning I'd get up and I'd just kind of look at it and be like, oh yeah, that was cool. That was a fun time.
Yeah.
But I think there's just been small changes now in my life. Like I get a lot of people ask me like, oh, did your life change overnight? In the jiu-jitsu community, it's like, that was the biggest thing you could possibly do. And I think they had this expectation that like life changes. I'm like, no, not really. I got back home and went back to training and.
Yeah. Do you sort of reset for what, 2026?
Yeah, exactly. I got a little bit of December off to just relax, eat some food, enjoy stuff, especially coming off the back end of the weight cut for this.
Yeah, that would have been tough.
It was, I deal with a really good guy. His name is Jordan. He's from Brisbane. He has his Instagram handle is the Fight Dietitian.
Yeah,
he's fantastic. He deals with Volkanovski and Adesanya, so he deals with a lot of UFC athletes. But he wastes his time dealing with me as well.
Yeah.
But he made the weight cut really easy. It was just more so like I wanted to eat fun foods while I was in America. I wanted to, have some In-N-Out and all that, and I was just eating my chicken and rice and boring foods. But it would we got down there pretty easily. We didn't have to do any sauntering or any water weight cutting, which is good.
Yep. Because that can really drag you down.
If you don't do it right, like if you have a really good system in place and you prep your body and you prep your sodium intake and your water loading and things like that, you can do things that make the process easier. A lot of athletes kind of shoot from the hip at it and are just going to go, oh, I'm a kilo over, so I'm just going to sit in the sauna. And they start panicking. They're like, I'm just going to put it as hot as I possibly can. And their body starts like getting fatigued and their central nervous system starts getting really shot. So they get sick and all these things start to happen. I think it's just like have a baseline knowledge of how to manipulate water in your body if you're ever doing a water cut. I'd always advise not to do a water cut because it's not comfortable, it's not fun, and it definitely takes a toll on your body.
Yeah, I was reading up on like deaths in boxing.
Yep.
And surprisingly, it's not really the heavyweights. No, it's the guys. It's the guys that cut weight quite fast and quick, and then they go into fight, and then they get hit, and then they die. And it's mostly not really from the knock; it's from the cutting of the weight. They're so dehydrated, their body's so shocked. Yeah, they go into fight, they take a few hits, their brain stops working.
100%, because you got to remember when you're sweating out, especially when you're a smaller person, it's all a proportionate game, right? If you're 50 kilos and you got to lose 5 kilos, 5 kilos, that's like 10% of your body weight. If you're 100 kilos and you got to lose 5 kilos, that's 5%? It's nothing. It's not much.
Yeah.
And then when you get to a certain kind of point where you're losing that weight, you're taking water out of the cells of your body, especially if you're coming in quite lean already, it's coming out of your brain. Like it's fluid, making your blood more like viscous, thicker. So it's impeding your body's function to actually put all the nutrients, the oxygen, everything around your body, and eventually it starts coming out of your brain.
Yeah, and that's where you start to have incidents.
Yeah, that's when people start getting sick or start like going to hospital and things like that.
Yeah, so and then trying to fight like 24, 48 hours after that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, if you can't have a good like refuel protocol of getting fluids back in, so electrolyte drinks and things like that. In jiu-jitsu, we can do like IV drips. In the UFC, you can't do IV drips. They don't let anything. They don't let you do any intravenous stuff. It just opens up the floodgates for possible PED, steroid abuse, things like that. So in jiu-jitsu, it's the Wild West a lot of the time, but we can do IV drips as well, and that helps just get fluids back in.
Yeah, I was talking because I have a dietitian as well. It's helping me for a run I'm doing this run from Melbourne to Adelaide
God.
along the Great Ocean Road.
How many kilometers is that?
Over 1,000.
That's insane.
Yes, I need to do it in 20 days. So it's 52K a day for 20 days.
I can't think of anything worse than running
Yeah, I know.
for that long.
Yeah, to be honest, I love it. I love this lot. I love the long distance running sort of stuff. I run 100K races and stuff like that.
That's
I
crazy.
really enjoy it. And anyway, I was talking to my dietitian just about getting everything right. And the one thing he said, right, and even my coach said the same thing as well. The one thing is, like, if you get too dehydrated and you go down, that's one thing you probably won't come back from.
Yeah.
Because it takes days to come back.
Yeah.
Like days. And it just made me think then that if there is someone that is trying to cut weight and they take themselves down to dangerous levels,
Yeah.
and then they're fighting the day after. Like, if my coach is telling me that if I go down on this thing, it's going to take days to come back, but there's people doing that in 24 hours and then fighting, that's probably where the incidents happen.
100%. I think athletes, martial art athletes in general, need to do a better job at understanding the importance of that last 24 hours, because it's easy to plan a training camp and do months of training and getting on the mat and working hard. But if you don't get those 24 hours right, that's what's actually going to really impede your ability to perform. But, there are these people that are willing to travel across the world to do these really good training camps and spend all this money on hotel rooms to stay in these locations to do these training camps, but then don't want to spend extra money on a nutritionist to understand how to do their last little weight cut. Like, that to me baffles me. I can't
That would be one
it.
of the most important parts, I would think,
100%.
out of everything.
Absolutely, because if your body can't function, it doesn't matter how many rounds you did on the training mats. It doesn't matter how much cardio you did, how much lifting you did. It doesn't matter if your body can't function on the day. Yeah,
if you're depleted, going into it completely depleted.
Yep. It's like that is like, that's the crucial stage. So if you're investing in your strength and conditioning coach, if you're investing in your like on the mat training, why not invest in a nutritionist, or at the very least gain understanding? Because I just see so many athletes shooting from the hip. They just get in the sauna and hope for the best, and that, like, it doesn't make sense to me. Yeah,
it almost seems like it's too late at that time.
Yeah.
If they're cranking the sauna up and they need to drop a kilo in 12 hours.
Yeah, if they haven't done the things in the lead up to make sure that their body is at the, like, where it's supposed to be, to either drop the weight through sweating it out, or they didn't adjust their nutrition prior to that. I've seen people like try and shave their whole body to get weight off them.
Really?
Like, literally just like shaving their legs, their hair, like all, like every bit of hair on their body, they'll shave it off to try and make weight.
Wow.
It's like, if you're going to that extent,
yeah,
like, you didn't just mess up now, you messed up a few weeks ago.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, you're trying to get back miles that you haven't counted.
No, the desperation starts sinking in.
Yeah. Hey, so let's wind back to 2022.
Yeah.
I want to go through that loss that you went. Like, did that, getting knocked out first round by a submission?
Yep.
Yeah. Did that really spur you on, or did you sort of come back from it like, man, I've done all this work, I've worked hard just to get knocked out in the first round? Like, talk me through your mindset.
So for me, going into that event, I was just happy to win my trials and happy to be there.
Yep.
I was excited about like the cameras and all these things that were going on. So it was in Vegas. It was at a center called the Thomas and Mack Center.
Mm-hmm.
So decently big stadium, decently big crowd. I think there was 11,000 people there. But I was excited to be a part of the event. I didn't really have any like internal expectations of me winning the event, which, you're already going in at a disadvantage if you're not believing in yourself.
Yeah.
So when I lost, so more so like when I was in that match, midway through that match, I kind of had this realization of, there's not a big gap between me and this person. There's not, like, it's not unattainable for me to beat this person. But I think I was just so scared that I'm a submission hunter, and I was not pulling any triggers. I was not going for submissions. I was being really cagey. I was being like, just not believing in myself and not taking any risks.
Yeah.
And it ended up where I made one mistake, and then the person capitalized on that mistake, and that's why they put me away.
So like a bit of inexperience?
A bit of inexperience. That was my first major competition. That was my first like out in front of a massive audience style competition. So it was a big learning curve for me.
Mm-hmm.
But then as soon as that event ended and I watched her run, and she had a very dominant run through and won the division, I kind of kept ruminating on the idea of like, I didn't feel like I can't beat her. I didn't feel like she was ahead of me. I didn't feel like
the step above isn't that big.
No. And I think that's that mind game of like, you need that experience to realize that if we make a few little adjustments, like I'm gonna bridge that gap.
Yeah.
And then that's exactly what I did from that. Like as soon as that event was done, had a few weeks of rest and all that, rest, recovery, whatever, got back home and started the process again. So we had 2 full years to nail the preparation for the next trials that would swing around.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what we did. We put every bit of time and energy, every bit of every moment was, every competition that was coming to trials or coming to ADCC was preparation for ADCC. So even though I would do other events and win other titles, the point of doing those events was for the preparation of ADCC.
Mm-hmm.
So the strategies going into those matches were not necessarily playing the A game, but playing BCD so that BCD was strong enough to then pull out if I needed it at ADCC. Yeah. Everything was about like every decision that we made to accept matches and different opponents was about ADCC.
Yeah. Yeah, so it all just came to a culmination point from that 2 years.
Yeah.
When you were in that training, did you ever sort of like flash back and remind yourself about that loss? Did that like steer you on to train harder?
Oh, always, absolutely. I learn the most from my losses than I do from my wins, and that's kind of super cliche.
Yeah.
Like you hear it a lot, but it's true.
It's so true.
Yeah. Like
it's so true.
I never want to make the same mistakes twice.
Yeah.
Because I know how much it hurts. Like I know how disappointed I can be in myself, or how frustrated I can be if I don't put on a good performance. Losing because somebody's just better than you on the day is one thing. Losing because you didn't do what you know you can do, that's a whole other game.
Or you made a silly mistake.
Yeah, exactly. So,
and there goes 2 years.
Yeah, you got to reset and start again. Yeah. And that was the reality for a lot of these athletes going out there. There are a lot of really high level athletes that lost in the first round.
Yeah.
That's the reality of specifically like elimination style matches where 50% of the athletes do not win a singular match.
Yeah.
They lose the first match.
Yeah, it's cutthroat.
Yeah.
I mean, but like that's probably where you get the best out of yourself, where you have to perform under that pressure.
Mm-hmm.
And just knowing that 2 years could go down the drain in 10 seconds.
Yep.
And there's a lot of pressure on you to perform. Do you love performing under that pressure?
I used to really struggle with it, but now I think I have a good, let's say like a good set of rituals and things that just put me in a good mindset, a good headspace to deal with that pressure quite well.
Yeah.
It's hard. Like if I get too in my head before I'm competing, like it can get stressful. I've had moments where I've had moments where I've let that pressure kind of impact my performance, where I kept thinking about how hard the training camp was and how much money I'd spent on flights, and all these kind of things just kept going in my head. And then I performed really poorly when I was a brown belt doing gi worlds. I just did not want to be there.
Mm-hmm.
But again, I learned from that experience. I learned from that feeling that I had of getting too in my head and thinking about the negative side of what if I lose, like that. Those kind of conversations can be really detrimental.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh man, I completely understand.
Yeah.
Just a bit of rewind back to my military career as well.
Yeah.
Like you dealt with loss a lot, but the way you rebounded from that loss is the most important thing.
Yeah.
Especially when if we were overseas and we lost a guy, the importance of getting back out almost straight away and continuing to do the job was like the best for the mindset.
Yeah.
Because you just didn't dwell on it. You just kept working hard and kept working hard. Which sort of, it's a real double-edged sword because you don't get time to process events.
Yep.
And you have to process them back in Australia.
Yeah. But
you obviously continually need to like work hard and work forward to get over those obstacles. Did you find that, especially in your early days, did you struggle to lose and then sort of get over those obstacles?
100%. Like I was talking about the brown belt and gi worlds that I lost in the second round. So what happened was I won the first round, had a massive training camp. We did some gnarly things in that training camp, like to the point where we'd do like insane cardio with our mouths taped, and then we'd get off the assault bike, and then we'd wrap our heads in gi jackets to like almost simulate being suffocated.
Yeah.
To try and deal with the stress of that and still be able to like think consciously.
That's wild.
Yeah, it was insane. We were doing some like hectic things getting ready for that training camp, and it was really hard, like mentally, physically fatiguing. And I got out there, and this was in California. We were in like Irvine, California, I think it was. Won my first round, and I won by submission within the first minute. And I just remember being like sad that I had won. I was like disappointed in the idea of that I needed to do another round. I just wanted to get out of there, man. I didn't want to be there.
Yeah.
And I was sitting at the edge of the mat on my second round. I was like, I don't want to be here. I want to go home. Like, I'm just not enjoying this at all. Got out there, made one mistake, and then just didn't fight back from that. Like, made one little like gripping mistake at the very start of the match, and then it just snowballed on me. And I just remember like the competitor at the time, she was putting on a submission, and I did not fight it. And as soon as it was on just a little bit, I'm like, no, I want to be out of there. Yeah. Which is a massive difference too. Like, I've competed before being in a submission, and I'm like, I'm either getting out of this spot or they're putting me out unconscious. I'm not tapping. Yeah. That's a really big difference, like mentally, about just not wanting to be there and like searching for a door. If somebody gives you a door, like, I wanted to take it. I want to be out of there versus like fighting against that. And after that, I didn't know whether I was going to continue pursuing a career in jiu-jitsu. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I was like upset that I didn't want to be there. I was upset because I had lost that desire to compete. And that was kind of a bit scary at the time because I wanted to compete, and then all of a sudden I was hating it. Absolutely hated it. Took a little bit of time off. COVID happened around that time, so it was a forced bit of time off as well. Yeah. And then the next competition that swung around after that, after almost a year of not competing because of COVID, was the next ADCC trials. So I kind of was surrounded by a group of people that were super motivated for these trials, and that helped quite a bit. I'd also changed states. So I was living in Melbourne and then moved to Perth for a little bit. So different training environment, different people.
That can sometimes do wonders, can't it?
I think it reset me quite well. It just gave me a different perspective. Also in Perth, the training isn't as good as the training in Melbourne. So I had to be a little bit more self-motivated in that way and take charge of my own training. But by the time that trials came around, which was like a year and a bit after my loss at Gi Worlds, I had never in my life been that excited to compete. Yeah. Which was just a 180 of what I felt at my previous brown belt competition. It was just so different. And
just your mindset?
Yeah, mindset. Yeah. And I think I didn't put as much pressure on it. I didn't have it. I wanted to win and believed I could win, but also I understood that my world was not going to come crashing down if I didn't win. Yeah. But I won, and I won with like really quick submissions all the way through until the finals and won the finals. Yeah.
That's cool as.
Big mental game.
Yeah. Like you hear this so much, don't you? It's like it's like 90% of it is up in your head. Yep. And then, because if you've got the natural ability, which you do, and then, you got the work ethic as well. But if you don't want to be there, like you said, you'll just take that door straight away. When it's presented to you, you'll take that door. And I think that's that's probably the one thing about, as we were talking about before with kids, like getting them to not quit early in life. Mm-hmm. And, just knowing that a little bit of struggle can do absolutely wonders for them, and not taking that door early in life, to continuously like take the hard road sometimes. It's so much more beneficial for you in the long run. Because once you become a quitter early on, it becomes a habit. Yep. And then quitting can become a habit, and you just keep quitting the whole time. You keep taking the easy road.
Quitting's easy. Yeah. Like, that's the reality of it. Quitting is easy. Doing the thing is much harder. But you don't reap the benefits. Yeah. Like, you don't get the reward if you don't do the thing.
Yeah. Hey, talk to me about your training camp for your last run as well. Mm-hmm. Because I want to know as well, and I'm sure the viewers, like, what goes into a training camp? And like, how long is it? Yeah. How intense is it? Is it 12 hours a day? That sort of thing.
So this particular training camp for ADCC, again, it was like a 2-year training camp, and I kind of say it like that because it wasn't balls to the walls for 2 years. Yeah. It was just, we were strategic about what skills we were developing in that time. And I say we because I have a team behind me. I have a team of people that are allocated to different parts of my training camp. So a nutritionist, strength and conditioning coach, a coach that is that specifically gives me instructions about what the day-to-day training is looking like. So strategies about what skill we're developing, what output I should be looking for that day, things like that. So there's a team of people behind me. It's not just me doing the things. I get support from a lot of different people. But that 2-year build up was divided into different sections. The actual hard hit out part of that training camp would have been, let's say, 12 weeks.
Yeah.
I had some matches within that 12 weeks, which were just practice matches. About, let's say, 4 weeks before ADCC, I went to America to finish off my training camp there. The training in America is fantastic. The level of athletes there is fantastic. There's also more female athletes, small female athletes for me to train with, which is just a more accurate representation of what I'm actually going to experience out there. There are differences between like grappling with females versus grappling with males. Like there's obviously the physical differences of like males my size, my weight are still going to be stronger than me.
Yeah.
But also like females are generally speaking more flexible in certain positions, like certain areas of their body, like hip mobility, knee mobility is a little bit higher with majority of females. The styles that females play can be a little bit different to the styles that males play. I say this like very generalization of it, but it's much more beneficial for me to be rolling with females my size than males my size when I'm getting ready for a female division.
Yeah.
But the day-to-day, like a week of training, we'd train every day. We'd train 2 sessions at least a day, if not 2 sessions and lifting. Those 2 jiu-jitsu sessions would be divided up into hard hit out, so a competition style training, which at Atos where I was training, the actual training goes for 2 hours, 2 and a bit hours, depending on the day. We'd warm up with just let's say drilling, so practicing different positional exchanges, things like that. And then we'd go into, okay, let's do short, sharp rounds of just like, you have X amount of time, 2 minutes to win the round.
Yeah.
You have 2 minutes to get to this position. Okay, we're going to start from this position. You got 1 minute to get out of that position. So high intensity rolling. And then we'd move on to like generally full rounds at the end, which are either 3 5-minute rounds or like 1 5-minute round, and then you switch partners and then you get another partner and they do 5-minute rounds. But generally the partner that you got was fresh. So you'd be going from a tired opponent to a fresh opponent, but you'd be tired.
Yep.
So we'd do things like that. It would change day to day.
Yep.
But for the most part, it was divided into like you do an active warm-up, you do specific positional stuff at a high intensity, and then you do more rounds at the end.
Yeah.
And by the end of that, like you're exhausted. You've just been moving for like 2 hours straight.
Were you grappling girls that were weighing more than you?
So here's at the time, the way that the absolute division works is you don't register for it before the event. You finish your division and then they ask you if you want to be a part of the absolute.
So you have to be invited.
You have to be invited to it. Yeah. So the organizers of the event made the announcement that there was going to be an absolute division, and I had spoken to them being like, oh, this is super exciting. But I didn't know whether they were going to want me in it or not. And then I'd finished my division. I'd won my division, and the organizer of the event was sitting there with his clipboard. And he's like, do you want to do it? And I was kind of like, I don't know. Looked at my coaches, kind of like looked at myself and was like, oh, I'm not injured. I got nothing to lose. If I lose first round, well, I'm the smallest in the division, so who cares? Yeah. If I win it, well, then all the glory, all the all the fun goes to that. So when I was doing my training camp, I wasn't doing my training camp with the intention of doing the absolute.
Yeah, that was my next question.
I wasn't even thinking about it.
Yeah.
I was like one thing at a time. I'm like, I just want to win my division.
Yeah.
The absolute would just be cherry on top.
That's wild that you won that without training for it. Well, like you did train for it, but you didn't train for it specifically with girls that were heavier than you.
Yeah. So when I grew up training, especially when I was like a blue belt, so I would have been 16, 17, I was fearless. I would just pick the biggest person in the room, and I would want to stamp my authority on whoever. I just want to prove that jiu-jitsu worked for the smaller person. Yeah. Which like built the skills of being able to grapple with heavier people. Yeah. I don't do that nowadays as much for a few different reasons. Like jiu-jitsu is my livelihood. If somebody is 120 kilos and they move in a funky way and they snap my ACL, well, it's not worth it for me. Yeah. It's not. I don't need that type of skill development. I don't need to put my body through as much pressure.
So you do it at competition level, but in training camps, it's just not worth the risk.
It's not worth the risk. No, I'd like jiu-jitsu is my livelihood. I also don't feel a need to pick the biggest person in the room and assert dominance on them anymore. If somebody asks to roll me, and I just think that they're either a dangerous role for me because of just how they move, maybe they're a white belt, they're new to it, maybe they're just dangerous because they want to be dangerous. Maybe they're a little bit of ego. So that's the other thing about being a small female. If I go to different gyms and I train with different, generally it's going to be like heavier males and I start beating them, their ego starts kicking in and they just do dumb shit.
Yeah.
Or they'll just grab and squeeze and hold and throw.
Yeah.
And just not really care about the repercussions because their ego starts to get ahead of them.
Yeah, well, if they've been grappling for like 20 years and then you come in
and they don't like it.
Fold them up like a pretzel.
Yeah, they don't like it. They start getting angry.
That's sad.
Yeah, it is.
It's sad that people can't put their ego aside like that, especially in like gyms.
Yeah, it is. And I had a desire back in the day to just humble people.
Yeah.
But now it's just not worth the damage to my body. I've been doing this for 16 years.
Yeah.
So there's already things that are niggly injuries and it's just not worth putting more strain and pressure on it. So I'm a little bit more responsible, a little bit less hot-headed now.
Yeah. Well, and you've also got the titles to back it up.
Yeah, exactly.
So now you don't really need to do the talking because you've already done the talking through actions.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
But I didn't do any training. So like over the years I had done training with heavier people. So I knew how to roll with heavier people.
Yeah. Yeah. And that was just a elimination, wasn't it? So how many fights did you have?
So all up I had 6 matches through the entire event.
Yeah.
So I had 1 match on I think it was the Saturday, and then 5 matches on the Sunday. Yeah, 5 matches on the Sunday. Yeah.
So did you train for that, knowing that you could potentially have 5 matches in one day?
We were doing, everything was like step by step. Everything was like deal with your division first.
Yeah.
And again, when we had signed up for the Absolute, it was very much like this will be a bit of fun.
Yeah. Let's just see how it rolls.
We had 0 expectations.
Yeah.
We were like, and I'd done the training, so I backed my jiu-jitsu. I'm like, well, I'm technical and I feel like I can beat these girls, but I also don't want to get injured. I remember winning my division, going backstage back to our warm-up area. My mum was sitting in kind of the backstage area, and I'm like, oh, I'm going to go back out there and do the Absolute. And my mum's advice was just don't get injured. Just don't get injured. It wasn't like, oh, go out there and beat them. It was just like, just don't get hurt.
Yeah. So even her expectations were like she could potentially get hurt here.
100%. I remember so what they do is they set you up backstage because they do announcements to call you out to put you onto the mats because again, it's a spectator kind of thing. They'll do like, Adele's going to be on mat this one, and then fireworks go off and then all this like cool shit.
Yeah, I watched some of the clips this morning. It was awesome.
Yeah, it's good fun.
Yeah.
But they tell you to walk out. They're like, you're stressed already.
Yeah.
So you're already like thinking about this match, and then like walk out, make sure you stop at this marker because fireworks are going to go across, and if you take an extra step, then the fireworks will hit you. And like, yeah, thanks.
Yeah.
And it also didn't help that half the athletes only spoke Portuguese because they're Brazilian.
Yeah.
And there's a guy that speaks English backstage giving these Brazilians.
So they had no idea.
They had no idea what was going on.
Yeah.
Anyway, I was backstage and all the girls from the Absolute were also backstage getting ready to be called out. And I just had this moment of like, I was just looking at these like large females that were just towering over me. I'm like, what the fuck did I just sign up for? Like, why did I put my name into this? I could get seriously injured.
Was there betting odds?
Yeah.
So what were you at?
I had no idea, but it would be like negative something.
Yeah.
It would be terrible. My betting odds for the Absolute would have been bad.
Good if you were.
Well, great if you were smart about it. Yeah. Even for my division, my betting odds. So for my division, I was ranked, I don't know why, but I was ranked 7th seed.
Yeah, right.
Out of, I think 8 competitors. Yeah, 8 competitors. I was ranked 7th seed. Now,
did they base that off 2022s? Or?
I don't know what they based it off of because we did the maths on it and so did all the other competitors. And based on the accolades that I had accumulated from one ADCC to the next, I should have been 3rd seed.
Yeah. Because
I was one of the only reoccurring athletes to come back.
Yeah.
So I don't know what maths they did to put the seeding in, but whatever. I think they just wanted particular matches for particular people.
Yeah.
I don't think they actually based it off anything. But,
yep.
But it meant that my betting odds were not, depending how you look at them, my betting odds were not great. But if you bet it on me, they were great.
Yeah.
And it was funny. I got messages before I competed and they're like, I really want to see you win. Also, I've put this amount of money on you, so, make sure you win.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, Jesus.
Yeah.
Like extra pressure. But for the Absolute, it would have been terrible. I have to try and see if I can find what they actually were at the time.
It'd be interesting. Like, I don't really know Vegas odds, how they do their plus minus stuff. Like we just do it in dollars here and in Australia. So, potentially you might have been paying, out of 8 athletes?
Yeah.
So yeah, potentially might have been paying like $10 or $12 or something, maybe 16.
That seems pretty good.
Yeah, especially if you were like the lower ranked ones. And then like the knockout stage as well. That's brutal how they do that. It's like if you lose, you go home. There's no like pool divisions or anything like that.
No.
It's like the old school UFC days. They just run through them and the best person wins. But I guess that's how that if you want to be known as the best in the world at something, you got to win on that day in that competition. Like there's no, you know, like they do in the UFC or like they do with boxing, they have all these promotions and fights and I'll do it this way, I'll do it that way. It's like, no, here's the set rules.
Yep.
You rock up on this day.
Yep.
Whoever's in front of you, you have to beat them.
Yep.
And whoever's the last person standing wins.
Yep, exactly.
That's so awesome.
Yeah. It's brutal. It's also like it becomes like a marathon. It becomes like you don't just need to win once.
Well, yeah, survival of the fittest.
You just got to keep going. You got to like reset yourself, go again, reset yourself, go again. And that was like the whole take it match by match. Like that was why we couldn't look too far in the future. My first opponent in my division was the toughest match. My very first match was the toughest match. And that's not to disregard all the, like, every match was tough for its own reason. But this particular person that I had in my first match, she's a 9-time IBJJF World Champion, Gi Nogi. She's been a black belt for something like 5, 6, 7 years or something. Like I remember growing up watching her competing. She's strategically very, very good, very, very technical. So if I was looking at my finals and not paying attention to that match, I would have lost that match. Yeah. So every bit of effort, every bit of energy went towards that first match. Yeah. And then we reset and we go again. Okay, now every bit of energy goes to the second match. Yeah. Okay, we win that. Okay, reset, let's go again.
Yeah. What's your refueling like? Are you eating and like in between matches?
Depending how much time. So sometimes they'll tell you how much time you have between matches. So for big events like that, again, I had like 1 match on the first day and then 5 matches on the next day. Yeah. And the break between the matches was, I want to say, like an hour sometimes. Yeah. So you could eat a little bit of food, but you couldn't have enough that it was sitting at your stomach. Very like simple carbs. Yeah. Like sports gels and maybe a banana. Yeah. Things like that that were very easily digestible. Yeah. Yeah. That's all. Like I'm really intrigued in on that. Like last person standing event. It's just, like I said before, if you want to be the best at something, like you can rock up on the day and have to beat everyone. That's pretty awesome. That's pretty awesome. Hey, have you ever? Because you do have a lot of people from your world step into the UFC and stuff like that. Have you ever had any? Like, has anyone ever asked you about it? Yeah, I get it all the time, especially people that don't know as much about jiu-jitsu but know quite a bit about UFC because UFC is obviously massive at the moment. I get asked about it all the time. I would love to do a few MMA matches to tick them off the bucket list. Yeah. But I've done training camps with friends that have done MMA matches and I've been hit in the head and kneed and kicked and all that kind of stuff. And it's just like, it's fun, but I need my brain cells in my brain as much as possible. Yeah. I only have a few of them as it is. I've got to do everything I can to keep them in there. But maybe one day part of me wants to do it because I at some point want to open up a gym, be a coach. And if we get MMA guys through the door, I want to have an understanding about what kind of jiu-jitsu they need to learn. Yeah. Like I want to be able to be a good coach to these guys. And part of that is if I'm going to coach them, I need to understand. Yeah. The best way to understand is by doing the thing. So I think that's my biggest motivation about wanting to do a little bit of MMA. I also see people like Mackenzie Dern step in and she's a multiple-time Jiu-Jitsu World Champion. Yeah. She's a fantastic grappler and then she moved into the MMA space and did fantastic because she would eat a few shots because her stand-up wasn't as good as some of these other girls, but as soon as she got them to the ground, game over. She was winning match after match after match. It was like Ronda Rousey. Ronda Rousey was fantastic at judo. Her stand-up wasn't as good as some of these other girls, but if she made connections and could throw her opponent and could get to positions where she could get to submission position, she was just better than these girls. Yeah. So she was running through these girls because she had a really like good niche that she was good at. Like she was really good at her judo. So well, she was the face of the UFC for a while. Yep. Just was tapping people out in under like 30 seconds. She was fun to watch. Yeah. Like, it was one of those things of like,
she had a bit of attitude about her as well.
Hunter. Yeah. She had a personality. Yeah. That's what we need, especially in jiu-jitsu. We need people with personalities. That's what's going to push the sport forward and get more spectators there. They need a story to root for. Yeah, big time. Talk to me about your daddy brand that you're building as well. So the Daddy brand kind of popped up started this year, I think it was.
Yeah.
And I was getting ready for a match, and the match was on Who's Number One. And they didn't give me much notice for this match. So when I got into the training camp, they gave me like two weeks notice. When I got into the training camp, I was like locked in. I was like, we got 2 weeks to do this. Let's really get it done. So when I was like walking around the training rooms getting ready, I was really focused. So I was walking around like, I'm just going to beat everybody. I wasn't letting anybody score a singular point on me. I wasn't losing exchanges. I was just focused.
Yeah.
And one of my training partners was like, oh, you're walking around with like this like aura about you, this like daddy kind of energy about you. I was like, oh, I kind of like that. That's funny. I had a bit of a giggle about it. But then it just kind of, she would keep saying it, and it just stuck. And I was getting ready to leave for America for this match, and we wanted to do something cool for the press conference. We wanted to do something funny. And the same person was like, oh, you should write something on your nails. You should, have something interesting when you get out there. And I'm like, oh, what do I write on my nails? She's like, write daddy.
Yeah, that's cool.
I'm like, dang, I like that. Like, yeah, I'll do it. Why not? Like, what's the worst that's going to happen? And it's still on there right now. Like, that I did them recently. It's falling off. I got to redo them. But I had wrote daddy on my nails, and I sent a photo to my manager that was in America. So when I got to America, she had ordered the first iteration of the hat.
Yeah.
It was just off Amazon. She just ordered a hat off Amazon and put daddy on it. And I wore the hat to the press conference, and people just loved it. People kept asking me about it. They were like, what's this whole daddy thing going on? And it's the whole point of it is like having this daddy persona of just dominance and authority and alpha, like this alpha bravado kind of mentality. The feeling of like something that helps me compete is like when I get out there, like the title is mine, somebody's trying to take it from me. And I can't let them take it from me kind of thing. It belongs to me until somebody takes it from me.
Like that champion mindset.
Exactly. You walk onto the match, you're like, nah, these are my mats. This is my stadium. People are here for me. Like that kind of.
Yeah.
And that helps me compete better. If it's like, if I'm going out there confident and I'm going out there like being able to pull triggers, because it was the biggest problem that I had in the first ADCC. I didn't pull triggers. But if I'm going out there backing myself, if I'm going out there saying that I've earned this, I deserve this, then I compete better.
Yeah, that's cool.
That's kind of where that came from.
Yeah, and now you're trying to turn it into like a business?
Yeah. So it's a brand kind of, so people can early next year they'll be able to buy these hats and represent the daddy brand and, show their support. And that obviously goes towards my ability to travel around and compete and do training camps. But so we'll have hats, shirts, we're going to have water bottles and stickers, and then a whole bunch of other things that we'll slowly put out.
Yeah. Would you ever in the long run think about like daddy sponsored athletes?
That'd be cool. That'd be very cool.
Obviously like they represent daddy, the brand.
That would be very cool. I think something that I definitely want to move into at some point is supporting athletes that are coming up.
Yeah.
So I remember the support that I got when I was first starting off, and people would, either throw money my way or just support or this, that, the other, and it made a massive difference so that I could travel.
Yeah.
I would love to do that.
Yeah, like a daddy development program.
That would be so cool. I'm gonna what do you call it? Copyright daddy development program.
Yeah,
I like that.
Yeah, I like that. It's just one thing off the top of them. They can give you like a wider audience coverage.
Yeah, for
of
sure.
Sponsoring athletes.
Well, they wear the brand out there, and we support them in any way we can, and that boosts the brand as well.
Yeah. And then that could really work back into your like owning a gym later on in life.
Exactly.
Is that what you want to do?
Yeah, I love coaching. I love passing on knowledge. I get a lot of enjoyment out of it.
Yeah.
So down the track, I'd love to do that. But yeah, at the back of all the hats, it's got BFTS on it.
Yeah. What does that stand for?
Born for this shit.
Yeah, nice.
So I put it on my water bottle when I'm competing, and it's like I just taped it on.
Yeah.
And now every time I compete, it's like that will be the thing that I'll like repeat in my brain, which is like born for this shit.
Yeah.
And that's the kind of mentality I want to pass on.
Yeah. Yeah. We had a cool mentality in the military for my mostly my team. It was monolabe, and it means come get some. It was the final word. Xerxes, how the Greeks had the Battle of 300?
Yeah.
Yeah, so the last words he said to the Persian invaders before dying was monolabe. It means come get some. So we all actually got it tattooed there.
That's cool.
And that was just our motto when we were over in Afghan. It was like, come get some.
I like that. That's very cool.
Yeah. And there's a whole bunch of guys that got it tattooed. Unfortunately, though, like the guy we got it tattooed from, he just didn't do a great job, and it's all blurry. I'm pretty sure we had a few drinks at the time as well.
Yeah,
so.
I was going to say, I was like, was this a sober thing or was this like a...
Yeah, I think it was more of like we got back and had a few drinks and we're like, let's all go get a tattooed. So we did. But nah.
Well, now it's got a good story behind it.
Yeah,
that's the
definitely.
main thing.
Well, that's it, yeah. And you're coaching now. Is that something that you sort of do on the side as well?
So I've always coached.
Yeah.
So that's when I was growing as an athlete, that's how I supplemented my ability to travel and compete. But now I spend a little bit more time with they're more my friends. Like I put time and energy into helping my friends compete. I wouldn't say that it's my main focus at this point, but if a friend contacts me and I'm at the event and they say, hey, can you be in my corner for this? Like if I'm going to be in their corner, I'm going to do my research. I'm going to watch these girls. I'm going to write notes and do all that kind of stuff because I've watched my coaches do that for me.
Yeah.
So I also understand what it takes from the backside of things to help with athletes. I would love to move into it at some point, but it would probably only be something that I do more seriously off the back end of my own competitive career. I do enjoy it though. Again, it's like jiu-jitsu is very like cognitive. It's very much like a puzzle. So if you watch somebody, when you're watching their matches, you're like, the perspective you have is how can I kind of reverse engineer a strategy to then beat these girls.
Like playing chess.
Exactly.
Everyone has their moves.
Exactly. So you got to be ready for, okay, if they do this, then they're probably going to start going down this route. Or if they do this, then they're going to do down this route.
So it's just so technical. When I was watching it before, how you both automatically sit down.
Yeah.
And then you're like, it's like a cat and mouse. Someone will reach an arm out and you try to grab it and you pull it back. And then someone will try and grab a leg and you'll pull it back. And then all of a sudden someone makes a move. You have to counter that move.
Yeah. Everything has a meaning. Everything has purpose behind it when you're at that stage. And if you mess up on one exchange, it can definitely snowball on you pretty quick.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's and that's the harsh reality of your sport as well. Like one mistake and you're out of there.
Yeah, I see a lot of like when the UFC's on and we go to the pub and we watch the UFC. Like there's two types of people watching the UFC. There's people that are just at the pub watching it.
Yeah.
Hit him harder.
Yeah.
And then it goes to the ground and there's the jiu-jitsu and they're like, nah, stand up, keep hitting them.
Yeah.
And then there's the martial artist that's watching it and they're like, oh, they're going to take 2 steps this way and they're going to like slip before they throw. And then they're going to do like a double leg, take him to the ground, like all the little nuance. Yeah. Everything has purpose behind it. You watch these guys and they're not just throwing hands. Everything has timing. Everything has purpose. Everything has like they're setting up what they're then going to throw on the 3rd round.
Yeah.
It's that kind of thing.
And like that's why Joe Rogan is such a good commentator because he just explains the whole process for you.
Yeah.
He's like, you watch, he's going to grab his back here, turn around here and do this. And then like 10 seconds time, he does it.
Yeah.
But Joe Rogan's already seen it happen.
Yeah, well, Joe Rogan's a black belt in jiu-jitsu. He was a fighter himself. Like he has the knowledge. He has such a long depth of knowledge. He's actually a black belt under my coach's coach.
Yeah, okay.
So it's all this kind of lineage thing, but he's part of the same lineage that I am. Yeah. Which is kind of cool to see because I train with my coach's coach every now and then I'll see photos of Joe Rogan come in. Yeah. The guy's called Jean-Jacques Machado. And he is kind of one of the grandfathers of jiu-jitsu. There's this whole backstory of the history of jiu-jitsu. Yeah. Because jiu-jitsu isn't that old of a sport. So there's only just a few generations deep at the moment.
Was it like the Gracies, wasn't it?
The Gracies. So
they started it?
To cut a long story short, a Japanese guy coached the Gracies. Gracies developed it into more of a street combat style grappling martial arts for the smaller person because the Gracies were not known for their size. They were known for their technical ability. They came in and kind of showcased how good jiu-jitsu was. Obviously, it then made its way into the UFC, did quite well in the UFC, and then just grew from there. But it started off as a family thing, and the Machados were, I believe, cousins of the Gracies, so they learnt all of that together. Yeah. And then it just kind of trickled down into what we have as it now, which is just like the fundamental jiu-jitsu, then your more modern jiu-jitsu, then you talk about things like 10th Planet Jiu-Jitsu, which is like a whole other style of jiu-jitsu. It's a gym, it's an affiliation, but that has its own little style over here. So it's the good thing about jiu-jitsu is you can take the fundamental understanding and knowledge of it and then you can personalize it. Yeah. Like jiu-jitsu is one of those things of like, there's not really like right and wrong in jiu-jitsu. There's pros and cons. There's, if I have really good hip mobility and I can put my foot over my head, then that's going to be good for me. But if I don't have good hip mobility, but I'm really strong, then this position is going to be better for me. If I have short limbs, then this exchange is going to be better if I'm really like long and lanky. You can make it work for everybody. You see 80-year-olds competing in jiu-jitsu nowadays, and they're obviously not competing like the adults are, like the 20-year-olds are, but they're doing it how they can do it with the ability of their body and their movement and their strength, that kind of thing.
Yep.
Which I think is amazing. You can make jiu-jitsu so personalized.
Yeah, that's cool. Especially so like how your body works as well.
Yeah.
It's not one size fits all.
No. And that's why getting different perspectives from a lot of different coaches is very cool.
Yeah.
So I obviously have like my core group of people, but I travel a lot, and when I travel, I get to, meet athletes that I don't normally interact with, and I get to pick their brain about how they do certain things, and they do it a little bit differently to me. And I do it a little bit differently to how my coach does it. And like, it's just small little differences that is just going to be dependent on your body type, your strength, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. We did a bit of jiu-jitsu when I was in the military. And it was like we did a week-long self-defense training camp. It was mostly based on jiu-jitsu, but it was also like we got taught from a very early stage in the military that if someone's too like close to you, then you've made a big mistake.
Yeah, that's what I do here.
Yeah, because that's obviously why you have weapons, right? So the one thing that we were taught to do if someone was that close to you was to immediately try to separate from them, and you're drawing your pistol.
Yeah.
To obviously shoot them. But so we didn't do a whole lot of it, and I just realised how out of my depth I was. Like just because, like I said before, we had a couple guys that could fight, and that were like black belts and stuff like that, and you would grapple with them, and it would be over in seconds for me.
Yeah.
And the realisation of how out of depth I was to someone that was actually trained in that area was like chalk and cheese.
Yeah.
It was pretty amazing.
It's crazy, just like the difference between somebody that doesn't train and the difference between somebody that does.
Yeah.
Like a lot of time, like jiu-jitsu people will say it's like rolling with a toddler. You could be the same size, strength, weight, all that kind of stuff. But if you know jiu-jitsu and they don't, or you know how to grapple and fight and they don't, it's like playing around with a toddler where you can just put them where you want them and move them where you want them.
Yeah.
Because a lot of the time your natural inclination is not right.
Yeah.
The things that you naturally want to do in each position is not going to help you.
Yeah. I had a friend that's fought professionally in Australia, and I did some grappling with him when we were over in Afghan. We went down to the gym one morning, and we just sort of started off going slow, and then I was like, don't hold back, do what you can. And it was maybe he'd tap me out like 10 times in a row under 10 seconds, and there were times as well where I was starting like a full mount on his back in the position where I was like a rear naked choke. He still got out of it, turned me over, and had me tapped out within 10 seconds. And it was like the guy's probably, my height. It wasn't like he was any bigger or anything like that. We were both the same sort of build as well. And it was just like you get so humbled by people that can actually fight if you're not trained. Yeah.
It's crazy. It's a lot of it is about like leverage, technique.
Well, there's years and years of training that goes into it, right? Like you just can't be good out of it. You have to learn stuff.
That's why jiu-jitsu specifically is one of those martial arts that takes the longest amount of time to get a black belt.
Yeah.
Whereas you do things like karate and taekwondo and you get your black belt in a few weeks, a few years.
Yeah.
Whereas jiu-jitsu, it took me, I started when I was 10. I got my black belt when I was 21, 22. So it took me
over a decade. Yeah.
Now, it doesn't always take everybody that long because in jiu-jitsu, you can't get your black belt until you're over 18. I started when I was 10, so I couldn't get my first color belt until I was 16.
Yeah.
So I had to wait till I was 16 to get a blue belt. So it goes white, blue, purple, brown, black. I went through the kids program as well, so the kids belts are a little bit different. But like, if we just base it off the adults belts, white and then blue at 16, purple at 17, brown at 18, 19, brown at 19, 20, and then black at like 21, 22.
Yeah.
So it's like it takes a long time to get a black belt and takes a long time to have that depth of knowledge. But also when you get your black belt, you realize, I don't know anything.
Yeah.
So you kind of start again. You're like, okay, like now I'm at the start.
Yeah. Yeah, that's wild that you've done all that training, then you get your black belt and you're like, shit, now the learning starts.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah. One thing that I would definitely do when I have kids is get them into jiu-jitsu early. I've heard Dana White talk about this, Joe Rogan talk about it. There's just something about jiu-jitsu that teaches kids life skills that you just don't get from school or friendships. And there's that bit of struggle that you need to put kids through. And you can do it with sport as well. I think, like footy, cricket, all that sort of stuff as well teaches you really team-orientated stuff. But jiu-jitsu just gives you that level of like, you have to go through a little bit of shit and you can improve from it as well.
100%. I think jiu-jitsu is one of the best things you can get your kid into for the reasons of it'll make them stronger, more coordinated.
Confidence though as well. Like gives them self-confidence, direction.
100%. Absolutely. Like the ability of listening to instructions.
Yeah.
Things like that. And also the perspective of like when you're put in a really tough situation. Jiu-jitsu is one of those things where if you're losing, you're physically losing.
Yeah.
Like you're losing in a sense of like survival, you're losing. Like in jiu-jitsu, if somebody has a dominant position and it's a survival, like they can kill you. So your brain starts to switch on to that survival instinct of the panic sets in, the fear sets in.
Yeah.
So to put these kids in these situations where they are getting physically overpowered, to then they need to be able to calm themselves down, to logically problem solve the problem, to get out, to get into a better position. It teaches them how to deal with that stress, that panic, that fear.
And when you put it like that as well, there's a real technical side of it. And it can help them later on in life where they have to think through situations and not just react.
Yeah. Well, a no-brainer is for females. It's obviously going to be helpful, unfortunately. Jiu-jitsu is one of those martial arts that is going to be the most beneficial for them because it is close quarter combat. It is.
And they can, protect themselves if they're going out one night and some creeps in the alley or something.
Exactly, man. It's the reality of like, yeah, you can teach females how to do boxing, but if somebody's significantly bigger, they throw a punch, they break their hand.
Yeah.
It's not in my opinion, it's not going to be the best self-defense.
It's just power to weight as well. Like women can't get that much power behind them with a punch. It's probably not going to do much to a larger man.
No, but if they can understand like leverage points, if somebody's trying to like pin them down, that kind of stuff, then
they can break their fucking arm.
Exactly. It's going to be much more beneficial martial art than some of the other ones that are out there.
Yeah.
I have the perspective of martial arts, which is in self-defense in general. I don't know how I feel about self-defense courses that run over a day. Because you can only teach so much to a person in a day, but
some
also
of the shit you see on the internet as well, you're like, what are you doing?
Yeah, but like if you put somebody in a high stress scenario, they're not going to like remember how to break a grip on the wrist and how to like, these are the 3 steps you need to get. You need consistent training.
Yeah, it takes years to get there.
You need to be doing it at least once, twice a week if you're just doing it from a self-defense perspective. If you start a kid young, like for me, when I have kids, my kid needs to be at least a purple belt.
Yeah.
I don't care if they're a competitor. I couldn't care less. But they need to be able to protect themselves. If it's a guy, like boy or girl, I don't care. They need to be at least a purple belt to be able to protect themselves, their friends, their family, all that kind of stuff. They need basic understanding of those, of that ability.
I think it also just gives you that self-confidence as well.
Yeah.
Like, there's that really good side of it where you can protect yourself, but that self-confidence you get from, doing a sport like that as well.
Yeah.
It's just invaluable, the work that goes into it. And it can't be taught in schools. No. Or anything like that.
I agree. My partner, she didn't train jiu-jitsu until like a year after we had met. And then, I was like bugging her about training and eventually she trained. She hated it at the start. She absolutely could not stand people being like within her close proximity.
Yeah.
She didn't like it. But she will train with me and then she'll train with me and one other friend. And then that group of people that she was comfortable training with just got bigger and bigger. And now she loves it. She's obsessed with it. Yeah. She knows more jiu-jitsu statistics than I do.
Yeah.
But she's also like insanely smart, kind of like ducks of a university cohort, dentist, that kind of thing. But something that I didn't have perspective on because I started from such a young age was that difference in confidence. She was in her 20s when she started jiu-jitsu and now she expresses the fact of like when she goes out or she's walking down the street, she feels much more comfortable to protect herself now than when she did before.
Yeah.
So she isn't as scared. Like she's still not gone down the back alleys because she's not asking for trouble. But she knows that if there was an altercation, she knows what it feels like to roll against and grapple against somebody that is significantly bigger than her and like the troubles that come with that. Yeah. So she understands how to like problem solve those events.
Yeah. And like, look, 99.99% of people are good people.
Yeah.
But you get that 0.001% of people that, might have too much to drink that night or they just might be a fucking terrible person.
Yeah.
And then, it can only come around once in a lifetime. But if it does come around that once, you just want to know that you're prepared.
100%.
And you can get yourself out of that situation.
Yeah, and protect the people around you as well. You know? Like my friends when I was in school, when we'd go out, they would invite me out and just like tell me that they feel safer because I'm there.
Yeah.
Like when we were walking home, I'd walk them home because they felt safer when I was around.
Yeah.
Because they knew that I could protect everybody, or at least keep them out of trouble, like keep them out of danger, keep them out of trouble.
Yeah, that's cool. That's cool. Hey, let's wrap this up.
Mm.
I've got one question for you, and I didn't let you know this before the podcast. So normally people get this question and they can think about it a bit, but I do ask this question to everyone. So if you could go back to your 18-year-old self and give them one bit of advice about life, what would it be?
That is a tough question. I would just say to be persistent with things. Like the benefit of hard work really does pay off.
Yeah.
Like you have to go through the shit. You have to go through the tough, like hard stuff where it's uncomfortable. You got to get to the other end of that, and it does pay off. Like you will reap the rewards of what energy you put in.
That was a really, really good response, given that you had like 10 seconds to think about it.
Did it sound good?
It sounded really good.
Okay, cool.
Well done. But look, Adele, thank you very much for coming on to Odds Collide podcast.
Thanks so much for having me. I had a great time.
You're welcome. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And for more information, head over to our Instagram at 2 Worlds Collide podcast. Take care.